You know that feeling when you just stop for a second and look up at the moon? There's this sense of wonder, right? A connection. And you kind of can't help but wonder, does it actually have some kind of power over us?
Well, turns out people have been feeling that way for thousands of years. But is it just a feeling, or is there something real to it? So that's what we're going to dig into today. Does the moon really affect us? I mean, think about it. For as long as we've been, well, we've been looking up, the moon has been our constant companion, this silent observer just hanging out up there. It's really no wonder it sparked all these stories, all these myths, and this really deep-seated belief that it's got some kind of pull on our lives. And, way before we had fancy labs and telescopes, what did we have? Stories. And these weren't just simple fairy tales. They were kind of our first shot at science, really. Our way of trying to make sense of the whole universe. So let's check out how ancient cultures tried to explain the moon's power with these amazing stories written in the starlight. Take Greek mythology, for instance. You've got characters like the enchantress Circe, and what's so cool about this is how these huge cosmic forces get tangled right up in human fate. The moon's influence wasn't just some abstract idea. No way. It was a character in the story, a power that could literally turn men into pigs. And you see this kind of thing all over the place in mythology. In this story, the god of war, Ares, actually turns himself into a wild boar just to take out a rival. It really drives home this idea that the gods and the planets weren't far away. Nope. Their drama, their jealousy, their anger, it had real, bloody consequences right here on Earth. It's a pretty powerful way to explain things like conflict and passion, right? Okay, so you might be thinking, that's all ancient history, who cares? But get this, the language of the cosmos is baked into our world right now. Monday, that's literally the moon's day. We still have huge festivals centered on the moon. We buy candy bars named Mars and Galaxy without even thinking about it. We even say someone has a sunny disposition. These old stories are so deep inside our culture that we don't even see them anymore. But then, things started to change. We built labs. We started asking for a different kind of proof, for cold, hard facts. And this is where the story takes a huge turn. We're moving from folklore to the lab, from stories to the scientific search for evidence. And this quote from a major study really spells out the problem. The researchers basically said they found a great deal of folklore, but no consistent association of moon cycles with human physiology and behavior. So the key takeaway here? Science was really skeptical. For every story about crazy things happening during a full moon, the data just wasn't there. So the big question is, how do you even test something that's so tangled up in belief and folklore? Well, you get clever. Scientists designed this absolutely brilliant experiment. They took sleep data that was already in the books, collected in these super-controlled labs. We're talking no windows, no clocks, nothing. And then after everything was done, they compared that data to the phases of the moon. And here's the genius part. Nobody knew. Not the people sleeping, not even the original scientists. The moon wasn't even on their radar. This meant there was zero chance of bias. So, the moment of truth. What happened when they crunched the numbers with no folklore, no expectations in the way? What they found was pretty amazing. The data revealed this hidden rhythm, and it was tied directly to the moon. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Around the full moon, the brain activity you see during deep restorative sleep, it dropped by 30%. That is a huge number. This wasn't just a feeling somebody had. This was a measurable physical change happening in their brains. And that's not all. The data also showed it took people about 5 minutes longer to fall asleep around the full moon. Now, 5 minutes might not sound like a ton of time, I get it, but it's another solid piece of data, another concrete clue that something real was going on, something totally in sync with the moon. So what was the total impact? On average, people were getting 20 minutes less sleep around the full moon. When you put all the pieces together, the conclusion was just undeniable. It was harder to get to sleep, the sleep they got wasn't as deep, and they slept for less time, period. This discovery led scientists to a really cool idea that we humans might have something called a circle-lunar rhythm. Just think of it like this. You know your daily body clock, the circadian rhythm? Well, this is like that, but for the moon. An ancient internal clock that's ticking along with the lunar phases, whether we can see the moon or not. It kind of suggests that our connection to the moon isn't just poetry. It might actually be hardwired right into our biology. So where does all this leave us? On one hand, we have thousands of years of powerful stories and myths. On the other, we've got brand new, hard data from a lab. How do we make sense of both? Well, it all comes down to realizing there are two different ways of knowing. And you can see how different the approaches are. On one side, you have ancient stories, which come from just looking up at the sky in awe and creating these intuitive explanations for what you see. And on the other, you have modern science, which comes from skepticism and measurement, giving us hard evidence of biological rhythms. They're basically trying to answer the same exact question, just speaking two completely different languages.
And that really gets us to the heart of it all. What if we stop pitting them against each other? Maybe science and mythology aren't enemies. Maybe they're just two different languages, both trying their best to describe the same incredible and mysterious universe.
For thousands and thousands of years, our ancestors looked up at that moon and just felt a connection. And now, amazingly, science is starting to find the faint biological echo of that feeling. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other secrets, what other ancient truths are still hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us inside our oldest stories?